Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. I am your host, Nelson, and I'm still in Virginia. It is currently raining cats and dogs, so that's why I'm doing my live. We have no plans for today. So, other than that, let's go into what we are going to be talking about in today's podcast. So, the first segment, we are going to be going over Team USA's exhibition game against Canada. They played last night at 10:30. And then in the second segment, we are going to be talking about Kawhi Leonard withdrawing from the Team USA roster and who came in as his replacement. Then in the third segment, I'm just going to, since Kawhi Leonard isn't on Team USA anymore, I'm going to be talking about who I think should be in the starting lineup, especially after these exhibition games. I'm just going to briefly go over who I think should be in the starting lineup. Then in the fourth segment, we are going to be shifting over to the WNBA, where I talk about Caitlin Clark. She's broken another record for the WNBA and just my overall opinions on that, but I'm sure you guys already know how I feel about Caitlin. Then we also have a very special fifth segment that I reveal at the end of the fourth segment, so be sure to stay tuned for that. But before I begin, as always, please remember to use the link in the description to get your comments recognized, or the link displayed below the ticker on every show segment. That is GSMCpodcast.net. It really helps the show, makes it much more interactive between myself and you guys. Once again, the link is GSMCpodcast.net. And without further ado, let's go right ahead and talk about Team USA beating the Canadian team in the exhibition game. Canada is arguably the second best international team in the Olympics, for basketball, behind the United States, who have dubbed the nickname the Avengers. And for those of you guys who don't know, it's because Team USA was somewhat humiliated last year in FIBA basketball. We didn't send, our best team, the best possible players in the NBA weren't really on the Team USA roster for a while, so this is sort of like an avenging type of team to try and, reclaim the glory, get the gold once again. It's not really the same as the Redeem team because, that's just another name, but this is sort of called the Avengers because of just how talented the rest of the roster is and just how many players there are on the team. So the final score for the Team USA against Canada, it was 86-72. The United States, they blew out Canada out of the water. Obviously, it didn't start out that way, however. Honestly, a lot of the players were still rather rusty and there wasn't really good enough chemistry coming in from a lot of these players because, again, they're so used to playing in a specific set, in a specific offense, and forcing themselves to play a different role is going to take some time to get used to on Team USA. And so this was the final score, and the players of the game for the United States was, surprise, surprise. Well, if the camera will shift over to... Okay, it's not changing for some reason. Hold on just 1 second. Let me fix that, see what the problem is. I apologize for that. I have no idea why it's not popping up for some reason. Hold on just 1 second. There we go. Anthony Edwards. Yeah, surprisingly, Anthony Edwards. If you guys remember from the previous podcast, I was it's a little bit ignorant to call Anthony Edwards the number one option for Team USA. I was wrong. Literally, the second he came off of the bench, he brought immediate impact to the United States, and they were able to pull out from this game. And again, as I said, the game didn't really start out in Team USA's favor. They were down by 11 points, and then came in the bench. Then came in Anthony Edwards, and he brought a spark coming off the bench. And the same can be said about Anthony Davis, who ended the game with 10 points, 11 rebounds, and 2 assists. Now, if you guys remember from the previous podcast, I said that I wanted Anthony Davis in the starting lineup. He wasn't in the starting lineup for some baffling reason. They opted to put Joel Embiid in the starting lineup over Anthony Davis, and it proved to be a huge mistake. And Joel Embiid ended up fouling out in the third quarter and was more of a liability for Team USA than anything else. His play style and just the way that he plays since he is incredibly ISO heavy, it just wasn't helping Team USA at all. And also, it should be noted that the rules in the Olympics and the rules with FIBA basketball are a little bit different. The court is a lot shorter, as I mentioned before, so the three-point line is, a foot closer to the basket, allowing Steph Curry to thrive and a lot of the shooters on the team to get a lot better looks because, they don't have to step as far from the basket to score a three-point shot. And more on the topic with Joel Embiid, he was way taller than a lot of the players on the Canadian team, and for some reason wasn't taking advantage of his height. Like, he was trying to back down a big, and he just wasn't moving. Like, he got stopped by a much smaller defender, and he was, again, more of a liability for Team USA than anything else. So I hope going into the future that Joel Embiid is going to get out of the starting lineup, and I know it sounds a little biased, but I genuinely do not feel like he is a good fit for that starting lineup. The way that he plays and the way that he wants to play, that's just not it. Like, he can't do that. But that's just me. I'll talk a little bit more about that in the third segment when I talk about the roster as a whole and what I think should be the starting lineup. Now, for Canada, RJ Barrett, he was arguably, the best player for the Canadian team. He ended up scoring 12 points, 5 rebounds, and 1 assist. And surprisingly, Dillon Brooks, he was also a key player for the Canadian team. He ended up scoring 10 points, got 2 rebounds, and 2 assists. He was also getting booed at by literally everybody in Las Vegas. So it was kind of funny watching everyone in the stands just boo Dillon Brooks, because, he is a common villain in the NBA, and it was just hilarious to see them do that. Now, about the game, like, as I said, it wasn't all in favor for Team USA, but once they figured it out, they never took their foot off the gas pedal. And once they got the lead, they never backed down. So I'll go ahead and read the rest of the stats and the rest of the key players in this game. Now, Devin Booker, he was in the starting lineup. He ended up scoring 9 points, got 2 rebounds and 2 assists. And LeBron James, the best player on the entire team, he ended up getting 7 points, 3 assists, 3 steals, and 5 rebounds. Now, who else played? Now, Joel Embiid, as I mentioned, he fouled out, and he ended the game with 5 points, 4 turnovers, 2 assists, and 6 rebounds. So again, just not a very good performance coming in from Joel Embiid. And let's see, Steph Curry, he only played 19 minutes, was 3 for 6 from the three-point line, ended the game with 12 points, and recorded 3 assists and 2 rebounds. Now, these aren't the expected stats that you would expect a lot of these stars to put out there. Usually Steph Curry is more of like a 25 or 30 point per game scorer. LeBron is a 25 point per game scorer, but don't expect that kind of performance coming in from a lot of these players, because again, this is FIBA basketball. It's a completely different game, and Team USA is going to be more reliant on team basketball as opposed to just individual basketball, which is something that Joel Embiid just didn't understand. So don't really expect all of these players to put up monster numbers as they would in the NBA, because not only is their usage rate most likely going to be a little bit lower than how it is in the regular season, but that's just not the offensive set that they run. Like, when you have a team this talented, running isolations every single play is just not ideal. Turning these players into shooters is not ideal. Like, you wouldn't want LeBron James being a catch and shooter. You want him operating the offense. You wouldn't want the only player on the roster really that you want to be like a catch and shooter is really Stephen Curry, because how he runs off of screens and how he gets all these open looks. You want him to be one of the main catch and shoot options for the team. Now, Tyrese Halliburton, he ended the game with only 2 points, but when he was on the court, he had a plus box score. So box plus minus, he ended up getting a plus 17, meaning that every single time that he was on the court, the team would just outscore Canada, which is very undervalued coming in from Tyrese Halliburton, like everyone's only going to look at his individual stats, but when he was on the court, the team was winning and the team was scoring a lot more than when he was off the court. So be sure to like take that into consideration. It should also be noted that Joel Embiid had the worst box plus minus out of everybody on the roster, but enough with the Embiid dislike. One of the things that should be also mentioned in this roster was that Kevin Durant, he wasn't in the starting lineup and he wasn't playing for Team USA in this game because they were more worried about his health as opposed to him playing in an exhibition game. And while I don't really like that some of these players are sitting out, I do understand why Kevin Durant was sitting out in this game. They want to avoid him getting injured before Team USA even plays in the group phase of the Olympics, which, again, is very, very important because Kevin Durant is going to he's most likely going to be in the starting lineup for Team USA. I'd be very surprised if he wasn't. And that's really the end of the first segment that I have for you guys. Not really much that needs to be talked about coming in from the United States. They just, came in and they handled business. But one thing that should be noted for the Canadian team was that Shai didn't really play as well as a lot of people thought he would play. I mean, he only shot 3 for 10 from the field and ended the game with 10 points. And we know Shai as that dominant scorer that he is on OKC. So maybe he's still taking some time adjusting to the role on his team and what exactly will bring the team wins and what will bring the team value. And it should also be noted that Team USA has a huge size difference compared to the Canadian team. Like in the first half, the rebounding difference was like around 20-5 or something like that. They were getting a lot of rebounds, and excuse me, the Canadian team, they also didn't really shoot that well from the field. I mean, they shot 43% from within inside the arc compared to the United States, so 60% from inside the arc, and both of the teams actually shot very poorly from three. Team USA only shot 30% from three, and the Canadian team only shot 21% from three, and they both hit the same amount of threes, 7, despite Canada taking 10 more three-point attempts than the United States. So those are just my final thoughts on the game. So with that, we are out of time for this first segment. So now we will go ahead and go into the second segment where I talk about Kawhi Leonard withdrawing from Team USA and just my opinions on that. So I'll be right back after this short break. Be sure to stay tuned.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows with 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
And we are back with the second segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this second segment, we are going to be talking about Kawhi Leonard withdrawing from Team USA. He made that announcement yesterday, and as you guys know, I wasn't live yesterday, so I was unable to cover this. This happened I want to say maybe 30 minutes before my live show would usually start, so I was unable to cover it, so I will do that now. Before I begin, I'd like to remind everyone, as always, to please remember to use the link in the description to get your comments recognized, or the link displayed below the ticker on every show segment. That is GSMCpodcast.net. Again, it really helps the show, makes it much more interactive between myself and you guys. Once again, the link is GSMCpodcast.net. And without further ado, let's go right ahead and talk about Kawhi Leonard and his withdrawal from Team USA. So again, he was supposed to be in the starting lineup. In my opinion, he would have been the starting shooting guard or the starting small forward, wherever you want to put him. And again, him being off the team is just really, it's normally if Kawhi Leonard were to not show up in the NBA, it would be a really big deal. But for Team USA, I don't really think it's that big of a deal. But that didn't stop the media from criticizing him on his decision and leaving Team USA at the very last second. Now, it should be noted that it was, a team decision. USA also had some impact on whether or not they felt Kawhi Leonard was ready to play for Team USA. And I guess they both agreed that he shouldn't really be in the roster. But aside from that, the media was really, really critical on Kawhi Leonard abandoning in air quotes Team USA. And Paul Pierce, he recently suggested that Kawhi should consider retirement. And a lot of this has to do with Kawhi Leonard and his knee injuries. This is half of the reason why Kawhi isn't playing on Team USA right now, due to his knee injuries. And while I do understand, conserving yourself for the NBA season, I just don't understand, why he would even go up to practice with Team USA if he wasn't even going to play on the roster. And as a Team USA fan, I'm very disappointed, and I'm still, I'm kind of upset, but I don't really feel like this really hinders Kawhi Leonard and his legacy. However, if you think that it does hinder his legacy, I do completely understand why you would think that. He spent a majority of his career load managing, sitting out in all these games, and since he joined the Clippers, he's barely been available for the Clippers in the postseason. And really, the only time he's been healthy in the postseason that I could recall was when it was in the bubble. Aside from that, he's missed a lot of important postseason series and games. And it's really, it's unfortunate for him, just, the fact that these injuries are really hindering him from playing these games. He recently just played almost a full season with the Clippers, which was something almost unheard of up until that point. And, it all ended up being for nothing because he ended up not playing in the playoffs because his knee injury struck once again. So let me know in the comments what you guys think of Kawhi Leonard and his legacy. Do you guys think that this withdrawal from Team USA is going to hinder his legacy, or do you guys think that this is just a normal thing and it's all right? He's not going to win a gold medal for Team USA, which is going to be the only thing that he's missing on his resume aside from an MVP. But again, 2 championships, 2 finals MVPs, and bringing the Toronto Raptors the only championship that they ever had, he's going to be cemented in history whether or not people like it. Now, his replacement for Team USA is Derek White, and a lot of people had some criticism to say about this, and one of those players being Jaylen Brown, his own teammate. He felt that he should have been on Team USA roster, and there are a lot of people as well that would have thought Jaylen Brown would be the replacement as opposed to Kawhi Leonard. In fact, Seth Greenberg recently said he's Kawhi Leonard 2.0. So if you lose Kawhi Leonard, why wouldn't you put in Kawhi Leonard 2.0? And I'll tell you exactly why. It's because this team is full of superstars. Everyone in the starting lineup has either won a championship, made it to the conference finals with the exception of Embiid, won an MVP with the exception of, some of the other players, and has won a championship and has made it far, right? A lot of these players are used to being, the number 1 option on their team, or at least the number 2 option on their team. Steph Curry, LeBron, they're used to being the number 1 option. Same with Joel Embiid, and the same with Anthony Edwards, and same with Kevin Durant. And Devin Booker is known for being a second option. Same with Anthony Davis. Same with Bam Adebayo. And having someone who doesn't really have the reputation of being a first or a second option on their own team is more valuable than a lot of people would think. And it's not like Derek White is an awful pick either. Like, I personally see Derek White as the player that's going to do, the dirty work on the defensive side of the ball, bring in a lot of hustle, and sort of be somewhat like that glue guy, like Anthony Davis was coming off of the bench for Team USA. And a lot of people, they really underestimate just how valuable role players are, and they would much rather focus on having star power on the roster as opposed to, having a role player or someone that is willing to do what the other players aren't willing to do, which was the sacrifice that a lot of star players had to make when they played in 2008 in the Olympics. Like, for example, Chris Bosh, he was used to being the number one option on the team, but then he was sort of decided to take on the role of being a defender and prioritizing himself on the defensive side, trying to make an impact on the defensive side, because playing alongside LeBron and Kobe Bryant, Dwayne Wade, and all of those stars on the team, Carmelo Anthony, I forgot to mention him, like, it wouldn't make sense to have somebody try to be a star when you're already loaded with that kind of talent. So having someone that is going to, facilitate that role of being a defender, I think is incredibly valuable. And quite personally, I wouldn't want Jaylen Brown on the team. But that's just me, though. I mean, I would have rather him be selected from the jump as opposed to Drew Holiday, but Drew Holiday already has history of playing for Team USA, and he's won a gold medal before, so I have no problem with this at all. And also, with Derek White on the roster, this could be the first time that a trio in the NBA wins the championship and then immediately after wins a gold medal for Team USA. That's never happened before in the history of the NBA or in the history of basketball. Like, there has not been a single trio selected for Team USA that has won the championship and then immediately after goes on to win an Olympic gold medal. It's never happened before. So this could be the first time that that's happened with Drew Holiday and Jason Tatum and Derek White. And more talk about Drew Holiday, being in the starting lineup. I wasn't expecting him to be in the starting lineup, but then again, he does have the history with Team USA. And, Derek White coming off the bench and being that defender would work really well. In my opinion, I think Drew Holiday should also come off the bench with Derek White and be those 1 and 2 guards that can both play defense, because again, they were both selected for the all-NBA second team, all defensive second team, I should say. I apologize for that. And again, a lot of people, they underestimate the power of role players. Now, do I think Kyrie should have been selected as opposed to Kawhi? Yes and no. The reason why I say yes is because I genuinely feel like Kyrie Irving for Team USA would be a monster. He would be fantastic for the team. However, I do think that Derek White would facilitate the role that Kawhi would have had on the Team USA roster. Be a three-point threat as well as a defender. And, you essentially replace a good defender with arguably an even better perimeter defender for Team USA, because again, Derek White, he made the All-NBA, he made the second team All-Defense. So we're replacing a defender with another defender, and I feel like that is a much smarter move than replacing a defender with an all-out scorer that is Kyrie Irving, because the team I wouldn't say the team lacks defense, but at the guard position, having Steph Curry at the guard position and then having Kyrie Irving, the team would most definitely lack defense at the 1 and the 2, which would be something that a lot of teams and national teams could exploit. Now, having Derek White, a primary defender, along with Drew Holiday, definitely mitigates that. Now, Kevin Durant, he's a solid defender. LeBron James, even with this age, is also a solid defender. We saw him get a chase down block in the previous game against Canada. So it's not like there's no real weak spot for this team in terms of both offense and defense. Now, which is why I feel like Derek White is a very solid choice. And on top of that, Jaylen Brown, he would have also been a pretty solid choice, but he's also been known to criticize Nike and Team USA, which is probably the reason why he wasn't selected for the United States team. Now, again, either or would have fit the role of Kawhi Leonard rather perfectly, so I really don't have a problem with Derek White being on the roster. But with that, we are out of time for the second segment, so now I will go ahead and go into the third segment where I talk a little bit more about the starting lineup, and, I'll talk about the starting lineup that Team USA came out with and the starting lineup that I think should be for Team USA, given that Kawhi Leonard has withdrawn from the team. So I'll be right back after this short break. Be sure to stay tuned.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
And we are back with the third segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this third segment, we are going to be looking at the starting lineup for Team USA, my opinions on the starting lineup, what I think should happen for the starting lineup, and, making a new starting lineup due to Kawhi Leonard not being on the roster anymore. Because if you guys remember from my previous segment, I would have wanted Kawhi Leonard starting at the shooting guard or at the small forward, depending on where you're going to put him, and would have much rather like to see him in the starting lineup as opposed to the starting lineup that Team USA came out with. And, now that he's not on the team, I got to make a whole new starting lineup because for reasons. Now, the United States team, they came out with a very odd starting lineup to start out. Now, they started Steph Curry, obviously. Then they started Devin Booker and then put Drew Holiday at the small forward. I don't understand why they started, 3 guards in the starting lineup as opposed to having, 2 guards, 2 forwards, and a center. I thought that was very, very odd. But at the same time, I do understand that this team, like the team that they were up against, Canada, they actually started with 4 guards on the roster because, again, this team was lacking height. And so I feel like this was sort of a lineup in response to the Canadian lineup and how they were running the team. So I think that's why the starting lineup was Steph Curry, Devin Booker, Drew Holiday, LeBron, and then Joel Embiid. So if this is the lineup that they wanted to, come out with in response to the Canadian lineup, like to try and match up with them rather well, then I don't really have a problem with that whatsoever. But if I were to go into this game, I would have put Steph Curry at the 1. Then instead of having Devin Booker in there, I would have put someone like Anthony Edwards in there. But I do understand if you would want Anthony Edwards to come off the bench and sort of bring that impact, because he was very impactful coming off the bench for the United States. So maybe being that igniter off the bench is the role that would best fit him and help USA, come out with a lot of victories. And I wouldn't put Drew Holiday in at the small forward. Instead, I would have put Jason Tatum in there at the small forward because while he is really good on offense, he's also a very good defender as well, which is one of the things that made the Boston Celtics so deadly in the regular season and in the playoffs. It was the fact that they had several players that were good on offense as well as having several players that were good on defense, because Drew Holiday, Derek White, Jaylen Brown, and Jason Tatum are very competent defenders. And the only problem that I had with the starting lineup was Joel Embiid in the starting lineup. Like, again, I don't think Joel Embiid in the starting lineup was a good idea. And you could see it from the way that he played in the starting lineup. Like, he was trying to just, get players in the post. He was trying to sort of find a bucket, or, in his case, try and find a way to get a foul call. And I just really didn't like his style when, paired up with the rest of the players on the roster. And it wasn't like he was bringing tremendous value for the team. And again, he ended up fouling out in the third quarter of this game. So I would have much rather seen Anthony Davis in the starting lineup as opposed to Joel Embiid in the starting lineup. I would much rather Joel Embiid just not play at all, if I'm being quite honest with you. Or if he is going to play, at least pair him up with a good group that isn't, the scoring kind of group. Like, maybe a lineup like Tyrese Halliburton and either Anthony Edwards and Devin Booker. And it's really difficult to make a starting lineup for Joel Embiid because there's so many scorers on the team. I feel like Joel Embiid should just not try and be a scorer for Team USA. That's just how I feel. I mean, just off of the lineups and just off of how he was playing. Again, I don't think they should put him in that starting lineup. Having Anthony Davis there, he was bringing tremendous value for the team, much more value than Joel Embiid. And again, it's really difficult to make a starting lineup with all of these guys, especially since Kevin Durant wasn't playing. So sort of, I feel like Kevin Durant, when he does go into the game, he's going to be primarily like a scorer for the team. So again, I feel like he should be in the starting lineup as well. If I really wanted to make a real starting lineup, this would be my official starting lineup for Team USA. It would be Steph Curry, and then in the shooting guard would be Anthony Edwards. Then in the small forward would be Kevin Durant. Then in the power forward would be LeBron, and then at the center it would be Anthony Davis. I feel like this lineup would work very, very well for Team USA. As we know, LeBron is an extremely unselfish basketball player, so he doesn't really have to be the scorer for the team. And on top of that, he does have the chemistry with Anthony Davis. And he wouldn't mind giving the ball to someone like Anthony Edwards or someone like Kevin Durant to create a shot for themselves. And then, you have some of the scorers come off the bench. You have Tyrese Halliburton come off the bench along with Devin Booker and even Jason Tatum, honestly. It's between Jason Tatum and Anthony Edwards in the starting lineup for me. I mean, personally, I would much rather see Anthony Edwards just because of how he performed. But if he's going to be that igniter off the bench, then I wouldn't mind seeing Jason Tatum in that starting lineup as opposed to Anthony Edwards. The dream lineup for me would be LeBron at point guard, Steph Curry at shooting guard running off the ball, then having Jason Tatum at the small forward, Kevin Durant at the power forward, as well as Anthony Davis at the center. Because one of the things that lineup would have is the ability to switch on almost every single defender, right? The only liability on the defense would be Steph Curry, because Jason Tatum, LeBron, Kevin Durant, and Anthony Davis, they're roughly around the exact same height. So they wouldn't have any difficulties in switching on any of the other players. And, having Anthony Edwards in, either the small forward paired up with someone like Drew Holiday or Derek White or even, Tyrese Halliburton, being that defender on the team would be incredibly valuable. But again, managing this lineup and managing the amount of minutes that all of these players can play is going to be really, really difficult, especially since one of the rules in FIBA basketball is that each quarter is 10 minutes long. So not everyone is going to get all that many minutes they're not going to get as many minutes on Team USA as it is. And now when you combine the fact that the quarters are 2 minutes shorter than what is expected in the NBA. So in total, that would be 8 minutes that aren't going to be played, in the entirety of the game, because, 2 times 4, that's going to be 8. So it's going to be 8 total minutes that is completely different and completely excluded from the Olympic basketball world and the Olympic basketball scene. So it's a little bit difficult to manage this roster and sort of who should be paired up with who, when should you switch out some of these players and when you shouldn't switch out some of these players. And a lot of these players, they might not even see more than a lot of them, since since Kevin Durant wasn't in the game and he was injured, a lot of players were able to experience more minutes in the exhibition match, and almost everybody played well over 10 minutes. And the player that ended up playing the least amount of minutes was Joel Embiid, because again, he fouled out. And once he fouled out, I fully expected Team USA to just blow Canada out of the water, because again, Joel Embiid just doesn't bring that value to the team, and he's not as valuable as Anthony Edwards on Team USA, or even Bam for that matter. I mean, Bam, he played 21 minutes. He didn't really play that well offensively, but he did have a very good box plus minus in this game. He had 14, which was the third highest box plus minus of anyone on Team USA. So again, that is value, and that is something that these players that came off the bench, they brought that to the team. Anthony Edwards, he brought tremendous value. Tyrese Halliburton, he also brought tremendous value, despite not being the scorer. Tyrese Halliburton wasn't being a scorer. He was very good on the defensive side, getting 4 steals, and he was also making sure that everyone else was being involved in the offense, which is what you need from Team USA. So maybe if LeBron is going to sit out, you put Tyrese Halliburton in that lineup just to, make sure that everyone gets their touches, because Tyrese is a very unselfish player, and he was being incredibly unselfish in this game. So that's all I have for the third segment. So now we will go ahead and go into the fourth segment, where, I talk about Caitlin Clark in the WNBA. She broke another record for the WNBA, so I'm just going to talk a little bit about that in the fourth segment right after this short break, so be sure to stay tuned.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
And we are back with the fourth segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this fourth segment, we are going to be talking about Caitlin Clark and her ridiculous performance against the Washington Mystics the other day. And, she played phenomenally. She always plays great in a lot of these games. And a lot of people I feel like they really don't give her the enough credit for what she's done for the WNBA. A lot of the WNBA players don't even give her credit for what she's done for the game. And it's annoying, because, again, without Caitlin Clark, the WNBA wouldn't be averaging, 100,000 views. And without her, the league wouldn't be as famous. Without her, players wouldn't even know, or fans wouldn't even know who half of these players even are and what they've done for the team. And recently, 2K, they finally made an edition, a WNBA edition, where a female athlete is the cover athlete for their game, which is the first time that that's ever happened. And that wouldn't have happened without Caitlin Clark. So it's really unfortunate. But in the game against the Mystics, she ended up scoring 29 points, ended up getting 5 rebounds, 13 assists, as well as 5 steals. She is the only rookie to have multiple 20-plus point games, along with 5-plus rebounds and 10 assists this season. And let's see, what else did she do? She became the first WNBA player ever to have 25-plus points, 10-plus assists, 5-plus rebounds, and 5-plus steals, along with 5-plus three-pointers in a game. And she also became the first player since 1973 and 1974 in both the NBA and the WNBA to record 29, 13, 5, 5 three-point makes and 5 steals, along with 3 blocks in a game. And guess what? She still lost. It's unbelievable what this woman has to do just to win a game, and it's unbelievable that when she puts up stat lines like this, they don't even win the game. It's really sad, and it's really unfortunate, and it's a terrible situation that she's put in. And why did they lose? The coach. The coach was awful in the final minutes of this game. The coach made an adjustment to the lineup that was incredibly unnecessary, and it just completely killed the entire chemistry that the Fever were having. They came back from a 20-point deficit in this game, and they still ended up losing. I don't understand. Like, I have a feeling that this coach is going to end up losing her job at the end of this season. I wouldn't be surprised if the coach of Iowa, that coach Caitlin, is going to become the new coach for the Fever, because let's face it, this coach is just holding this team back. And on top of that, a lot of these players, unfortunate as it is, they're also holding this team back. I'm sorry to say, but this team is just not at the same level as Caitlin Clark. It's really, really unfortunate. I mean, granted, a lot of these players in this game, they didn't even play that well to sort of help Caitlin win this game. I mean, Kelsey Mitchell, she became an all-star this year. I'm very surprised she became an all-star. She ended up scoring 15 points but took 14 shots and missed every single three-pointer she took. And Aaliyah Boston, who is, in my opinion, the second option for this team and a well-deserved all-star for the team, she ended up only scoring 6 points and took 4 shots. That cannot happen. There's no reason why Boston should be taking 4 shots as opposed to Mitchell, who was taking 14 shots. Like, are you serious? Now, another player that ended up playing pretty well was, let me just go ahead. Nalissa Smith. She ended up getting 11 points, but again, took 10 shots. Like, the efficiency on this team is extremely bad. And if it weren't for Caitlin, this team wouldn't be relevant, obviously. And if it weren't for Caitlin, this team wouldn't be nearly as good. And what makes this performance even more baffling was, even with this performance, for some reason, Angel Reese was ranked higher in the Rookie of the Year award standings for some reason, and all because of her, double-double streak, which I will point out, she was stat padding in the previous game. Like, you guys, again, that might sound like a little bit of hater logic, but in the final minutes of the game, when they were up by, I want to say maybe 7 points with 15 seconds left to go, or like 8 points, something around that, the game was already decided, right? The game was over, and here you have Angel Reese still calling for the ball and still trying to score, because she was 2 points off of getting she was like a few points off of getting her double-double and continuing her streak of consecutive double-doubles. And while I do understand that, you want to keep that streak alive, if the game is over, do you really have to go and get another basket? I'm not one of those guys that defends the unwritten rule of the NBA and the WNBA, where if the game is over, you should just dribble the clock out. But this is going to be the type of performance that sort of goes and gets swept under the rug for Angel, simply because she's still on that double-double streak, and how no WNBA player has ever been on a double-double streak as much as she has, which I have no problem with that, but it's just really the problem that I will have is that this kind of performance is just going to get pushed under the rug, and she's going to gain a little bit more credit than she needs to gain, as opposed to where Caitlin, she's going to get the biggest criticism for Caitlin is the fact that the team keeps losing. Even though the reason why they lose is not her fault whatsoever, and the reason why they can't win is not her fault whatsoever. She's going to get criticism for things that are out of her control, as opposed to Angel, who's going to get praise for things that are in her control and are just going to get shoved under the rug. Because, a meaningless 2 points at the end of a game that's already decided, it shouldn't be taken, as valued or as important as a performance like Caitlin did. And really, like I said before, the coach and her rotations is going to hold this woman back. And again, with Angel Reese and her double-double streak, half of again, it's going to sound like hater logic, but a lot of her rebounds are off of her own misses. And is that really valuable for a team? Is that really the most important thing that the player needs? In my opinion, it isn't, but again, it just sounds like hater logic from a lot of other people's perspective, but I genuinely just don't understand. this double-double streak, sure, it's important, and the winning games, sure, that's also important. But a lot of these things that Caitlin has to go through are just completely out of her control. Like, even her own teammate, Kelsey Mitchell, said that she's never once in her life had to deal with getting double-teamed at the half court. Like, this is something that only Caitlin has had to deal with. Like, there's never been a WNBA player that gets double-teamed immediately when she crosses half court. And that's not even going to get talked about, because it's like these situations are almost impossible to counter if your team doesn't know how to counter it. I mean, if she gets doubled, like, she immediately gives the ball up, and then the women on the team, they just don't know what to do with the ball. And it infuriates me, because it's like, usually when an NBA player gets doubled, like, for example, when James Harden was on his ridiculous scoring stretch with the Houston Rockets, when he gets doubled, the rest of the players, they know where to stand and to take advantage of the double team, right? Create open looks for themselves and for the rest of the team off of the double team. Like, there was this one play where in the bubble, James Harden, he scored like 20 points in the first quarter, and obviously, teams were immediately starting to double him. So Russell Westbrook, being that second option, he stood in the middle of the sort of painted area, I guess you could say, and drew in a lot of the weak side help, right? Now, the difference between what Russell Westbrook did and what the WNBA players on her team are doing is that they space out for some reason, and they don't even bother trying to shoot the ball. Like, they don't put themselves in a position to score, and they don't put themselves in positions to allow other players to score. And part of that might be because of the coaching. Part of that might also be because of the women not knowing how to deal with that, because, again, it's rare that a WNBA player gets double teamed as much as she does. But again, I feel like this is just basic basketball knowledge that a lot of these players and a lot of these teams should already know how to counter, yet they just don't. Like, when James Harden was getting doubled, like, Russ knew exactly where to stand, and he got himself into a position where it was basically either a basket or a wide open three that was going to happen. Like, the defender that was on him was Norman Powell, and Norman Powell is a much slower defender and like a much slower player than Russell Westbrook. So he got himself into a position where basically there was no point, like, there was a point of no return for the defense coming in from the Dallas Mavericks. I believe that was the team that they were playing up against in that matchup. And I wish I had like a graphic and like a picture of showing like what I'm talking about, but when he got the ball in the painted area, he immediately blew by Powell, and with the spacing that the Houston Rockets had at that time, it was really difficult for the help defender to go down and contest that. Once the ball got to Russ in the painted area, they essentially like reached the point of no return, and that was a basket for Russ. But he put himself in a good position to score. He put himself in a position that if he wasn't going to score, the help defenders would come in and try to stop him from scoring in the paint, and that would have been a wide open three-pointer for one of his teammates. And the WNBA players, at least on Caitlin's team, they don't do that for some reason. Blame it on the coach, blame it on the players. I mean, you could honestly blame it on both of them, but they don't help her. And on top of that, the coach runs the same play over and over and over and over again. After she runs it the one time, it doesn't work. She runs it again the second time. It doesn't work. Whoops, let's run it a third time. Doesn't work. Okay, let's run it again. It's like, what are you doing? But aside from that, we are out of time for the fourth segment. So we will go ahead and go into the fifth segment, where I talk about Mark Armstrong and his status on the Brooklyn Nets, because he is going to play in the Summer League. And as you guys know, or if you haven't tuned into the podcast previously, I'll just go ahead and explain that in the fifth segment. So I'll be right back after this short break. And we are back to the fifth and the final segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this fifth segment, we are going to be talking about Mark Armstrong. And for those of you guys who have no idea who he is, he used to be we were in the same class of 2020, and we graduated in the same year, and we've been in the same school together. He was in the exact same high school. He's the leading scorer. Like, he has the all-time points in all of the program's history, and he was able to do this under a COVID year, which is probably not going to get talked about as much as it should. But aside from that, our high school, they recently put out an announcement talking about him participating in the Summer League. Now, this is going to be the first time that anyone from that high school has ever participated in an NBA basketball game. And regardless whether you guys want to say that this game counts, whether it's the Summer League, the Summer League doesn't count, blah, blah, blah. Personally, I don't think that's a really big deal. This is an NBA court. This is NBA basketball, and he's going to be the first ever alum to participate in that regard. Obviously, Villanova, they've had several players come in from and be successful in the NBA. There's Jalen Brunson, there's Josh Hart, there's DiVincenzo, there's Mikal Bridges, who are all going to play on the exact same team. So Villanova is no stranger to bringing talent to the NBA. Now, the statement that the high school put out, the all-time leading scorer in St. Peter's Prep basketball history, Mark Armstrong, will play with the Brooklyn Nets in the 2024 Summer League in Las Vegas, Nevada. He signed with the Nets as an undrafted free agent on June 28th, and he spent the last 2 years playing at Villanova University, where he was a 2-year starter and averaged 24 minutes per game and 8.4 points per game in his sophomore campaign with the Wildcats. He becomes a member of the team that plays their home games at Barclays Center, located 21 miles away from his hometown, South Orange, New Jersey, and 6 miles away from Grand and Warren. Now, the Summer League, it's an off-season tournament that features rookies, sophomores, and NBA G League affiliate players, and the prestigious showcase started in 2002 and has grown in the past few years as a notable event on the NBA calendar. The Nets, they will complete their first Summer League game on July 12th against the Indiana Pacers. Tip-off is scheduled for 8 p.m. and the game will be aired live on NBA TV. And they also released another statement to please tune in to watch Prep's very own compete against the best basketball players in the world. And the community is looking forward to cheering on Mark as he begins his professional basketball career. So again, his career with Villanova, while I thought it was rather short and I genuinely wasn't expecting him to I was hoping that he would get picked in the draft, but he didn't get picked in the draft. But I wasn't expecting him to sign as an undrafted free agent. I honestly didn't even know that was a thing up until he signed as an undrafted free agent. I mean, I know that they acquire other players via the G League and things of that nature, and a lot of players end up making the roster despite not being drafted. But I genuinely just wasn't expecting this move coming in from the Brooklyn Nets of all teams. You know, they are my favorite team to watch they are my team, I should say. Not really my favorite team to watch because they've been playing some really mediocre basketball. But now that he's going to be on the roster, now there's actually something to look forward to. And, I hope that he has a very successful career with the Brooklyn Nets, or however his journey in the NBA, wherever his journey in the NBA takes him. And he's a very competent scorer. He has ridiculous hops. Like, he knows how to jump. He's ridiculous. I mean, I saw him in high school, and he was by far one of the best players that I've seen on a high school level. And he even played for Team USA's under-18 team, where he ended up winning a gold medal. So that most definitely must have boosted his chances of making it into the NBA. So I just wanted to point this out in the fifth segment, because again, this is one of the only segments where I actually get to talk about like topics that are closer to me, and just topics that I feel like are not really newsworthy topics, I should say, because this isn't obviously going to make the headlines of any sort of big news network like, let's say, ESPN. Like, obviously they're going to be talking about Kawhi Leonard as opposed to talking about someone like this, but I feel like this is sort of something that should be brought to everyone's attention because, again, he is an alumni from my high school, and this is something that is in turn really important to me. So that's really all I have for this 5th segment. Again, tune into the Summer League. Hopefully he performs pretty well, and hopefully he doesn't get the same amount of criticism as Bronny James gets in the Summer League. But aside from that, that's all I have for you guys on this segment. So again, it's a much shorter segment than a lot of the other segments, but thank you so much for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a lot to us, so please remember to subscribe to the show, leave a positive review. It really does make a difference. We also invite you to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram for more content and updates. As usual, please remember to use the link in the description to get your comments recognized, or the link displayed below the ticker on every show segment. That is gsmcpodcast.net. Really helps the show, makes it much more interactive between myself and you guys. That is all I have for you today on this podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. I am your host, Nelson, and as always, take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn ain't